Welcome, 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 everyone, to another edition of Remixing with Culture, Politics and Culture with me, Pam. This channel, as you know, and some of you may not, it's all about voter education, advocacy, and social justice with a mix of culture for a twist. I am so excited tonight about today's interview with the person we're going to talk with. Um, I have to admit to you, we're going to talk to a very progressive district attorney whose election was historic here in Durham, North Carolina. Historic period, I guess, all across the country, quite frankly. And I will admit, as a person who votes in every election, as I am encouraging you to do so in this by this channel, I never really paid a lot of attention to the district attorney's position. I think all of us became very much aware of the district attorney when we learned of such cases as Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and any other controversial case. Oh, even George Floyd as well. So we really learned what the power of that position is. And for it to be an elected position, we have to be so careful about who we select in that position. That means that we have to research, we have to plan our voting. And that, again, is what this channel is about. Because if you're not educated about it, you won't do that very well. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up our guest this evening, Satana DeBerry. She is the district attorney for Durham, North Carolina, for North Carolina's 16th prosecutorial district. And we're bringing her up. Hello there.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm going to give a little introduction about you. You assumed your office in 2019. You were elected on November 6, 2018, a historic election for Durham, North Carolina, and I will say for the entire country. Your current term ends on January 1st, 2023, so you're running for re-election, and we're glad about that. D.A. DeBerry is a native of North Carolina and grew up in the small town of Hamlet, which is in Richmond County here. She left her small community to attend Princeton University in New Jersey and obtained a degree in sociology. She returned back home, but this time to Durham, North Carolina, which Duke is everything here in Durham, and went to law school at Duke University, and later went back.
Wait, Grace. I'm sorry. I had one of my children walk into the kitchen while I was trying to mute them. I unmuted myself.
Okay. Then she went back to grad school again at Duke University to receive her MBA degree. She is the mother of very active teenage daughters. And prior to becoming the DA for Durham, DeBerry represented clients as a criminal defense attorney in private practice in Hamlet. She served as the general counsel for the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, as well as serving in numerous roles within the nonprofit community. She even worked as executive director for the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Her consistent commitment with every position that she has held is that she is determined. She is determined to do what she can to dismantle systems that restrict the lives of poor people, families, communities of color, and other marginalized and underrepresented groups. Welcome, D.A. DeBerry. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
No. I appreciate you so much because you literally reached out to me, and I thought she want to come on my. I mean, this is the little slowly but growing channel. So I'm hoping that, and listen, while I got everybody's attention, whoever's on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button and what have you, so that you help contribute to make this channel grow, and also share this with other people. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna put the link in the chat in a little bit, so that you all can participate in the conversation. So, DA DeBerry, tell me, what exactly does the district attorney do? What is the role of the district attorney?
That is a great question, Pam, and I appreciate your intro, because not a lot of people do know what their district attorney does. They
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily know that that may be an elected position, and in every state but two in the United States it is. So this will be the portion of the show where we will call this hashtag Know Your DA, right?
Know your DA. All right. I like that.
That's
I
right.
like that idea all the way.
Absolutely. And so in North Carolina, the district attorney is a constitutional officer. That means they are written into the Constitution, just like the governor and the General Assembly. Um, and the district attorney represents the state of North Carolina in all criminal cases, whether that be in district or superior court. And the DA has 100% discretion. In North
Mhm.
Carolina, law enforcement charges. DAs do not regularly charge. So if you're going to be charged with a crime, it will happen through the police or the sheriff or any other number of law enforcement agencies in North Carolina. And then the DA has 100% discretion in
Mhm.
determining whether or not those cases move forward in court.
Mhm.
And so that is a really important piece, because it is the district attorney that then reviews the investigations of law enforcement,
Mhm.
decides whether there is enough to move forward, and when deciding whether there's enough to move forward, decides to offer pleas, decides whether to divert cases from court, decides it is the DA that represents the state if a defendant decides to go to trial, if a defendant asserts their innocence. And so there are a lot of ways in which the district attorney determines the discretion of the district attorney dis- determines the outcome of the criminal legal system.
Mhm. That is so powerful, because and we learned this so painfully with the Ahmaud Arbery case, because that district attorney she had the discretion, as you were talking about, and the power to wipe the whole thing away had it not been for that video. Correct?
That's correct. And the district attorney's offices are historically, especially in the South, are
Mm-hmm.
historically black boxes. You don't know
Mm-hmm.
necessarily what is happening
Mm-hmm.
once somebody has been charged and the case has been turned over to the district attorney. And so one of the things that we have been trying to do in the 3 years that I've been district attorney is really have some transparency about what we do, to
Mm-hmm.
talk about really what the criminal cases look like, because for most Americans, they don't have any real interaction with the criminal legal system. The most interaction they might have is they might get a traffic ticket every now and again, but most people don't even get those. And what they think is happening down at the courthouse is Law and Order or CSI. And on those television shows, it's all murder and rape and robbery, when in fact, in many state courts, it is mostly low level cases. And not to say that there are not violent cases that we deal with, but those are only about 10% of what we do.
Uh-huh. And that was one thing in researching you, is that there was a consistent theme about all of these low level charges in these cases. And I know, being that it's government, there is always paperwork. So I can imagine for suspended licenses, and for remember that case that they just that officer in Minnesota, or was it Wisconsin? The lady that said taser, taser, taser. That
No,
lady.
it was Wisconsin. It was
It was in
Minnesota,
the
I believe. It was
Midwest,
Minnesota. Yeah.
Minnesota. But they stopped him because of what was hanging from his rearview mirrors, some little doodads. And I'm thinking, we're wasting time on things like that when you have murder charges and all kinds of things. It just seems crazy, you know. It
That's
seems
correct.
ridiculous.
That's
Hmm.
correct. We typically use the criminal legal system for things that we haven't invested in our community, right? So we use it to deal with people with substance abuse issues. We
Hmm.
deal it use it to deal with people with mental health issues. In some communities, that was one of the issues in Ferguson, Missouri, is that in some communities they use traffic tickets to fund their law enforcement efforts or to
Hmm.
fund local government. So they are dependent. They need to stop more people um, in order to uh, make sure that local government keeps running.
Right,
And
right,
so there are lots of ways in which we want the criminal legal system to handle things that we should be handling ourselves, and that we should be handled through other ways of government, and that we should really um, be using the criminal legal system for those most violent and most serious cases.
right, right. Your election to the 16th District of North Carolina as DA was historic on so many levels. You're a Black woman. You came in as a progressive when we all know that here in the South, the typical uh, battle cry is law and order. You know, lock them up, lock them up, lock them up, that type of thing. What exactly does it mean to be a progressive district attorney? How do you
Sure.
define that?
Yeah. So the way that I would describe what I do is we want to be smart on crime. If
Hmm.
being tough on crime worked, we wouldn't have any more crime. All we've ever done for 400 years in this country, especially the Black and brown people, is scream,
Hmm.
lock them up, lock them up.
Right.
We never actually looked at the system and seeing if locking people up works,
Mhm.
especially for these low level things. Now, as a society, we do not yet have um, we just don't have solutions for people when they've committed serious and violent crimes. But we
Mhm.
do have solutions for people who have substance abuse issues and may be sleeping outside and therefore come into contact with law enforcement, or may break into some place to keep warm, or people who have substance abuse issues, so maybe
Mhm.
stop for the possession of a controlled substance. We do have other ways other than the criminal legal system for dealing with those things. And so
Mhm.
what I say as a reform prosecutor is that we should let the people who are experts in dealing with substance abuse and mental health and poverty really
Mhm.
deal with those issues. What
Right.
we are experts at is justice and dealing
Mhm.
with the most serious and violent crimes. And
Right.
so, as a reform prosecutor, we try to identify the things that are most serious and most violent in our office,
Mhm.
um, focus on those things with the help of our law enforcement partners,
Mhm.
and then really try to, for things like driving while license revoked or simple possession of marijuana or misdemeanor larceny, really try to get people either the help that they need or some type of accountability that doesn't involve them going to jail and costing taxpayers money.
Right. Right. You know, all across the country, and certainly here in Durham, but literally all across the country, we have an explosion of gun violence. And but yet we cannot agree on a federal level about gun control. I thought for sure that when Sandy Hook happened, when all those little babies perished, I thought for sure we were going to get gun control, and we did not. We ultimately failed. The only thing that did happen good from that, just recently, they sued a manufacturer and they got a big lawsuit, but that still isn't the same as having a widespread law about guns and gun control. So we have that problem. And then another problem or situation that we have that came to the forefront, at least in our community. And when I say our community, I mean the entire triangle region of North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, was the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am very
Yeah,
familiar with ACEs.
very familiar, right?
Mhm.
So prior to the pandemic, there was this big push to talk about ACEs. And as I studied you, and you believe in reform and getting to the root causes and things like that, and as we're seeing more and more younger people involved in some heinous crimes, I thought about ACEs because adverse childhood experiences impact how children grow up and what they ultimately end up doing or not doing, favorably or unfavorably. And so I was just wondering, have in your thinking of how we can improve things in our community, had you thought about how that aspect of mental health, the ACEs, the
Mhm.
adverse childhood experiences, how there could be some connection to improving the lives of younger people before they get into the bad habits or the bad lifestyle or whatever, before things escalate and become not so good?
Yeah. So I think there are two parts to this question. One, the part about gun violence, like you said, gun violence is a high is at high all over the country, whether it
Yeah.
be cities, rural, suburban. Um, Literally every jurisdiction in North Carolina has seen an increase in
Yes.
gun violence.
Mhm.
And some of that is related to the pandemic. I think there has been a 300% increase in the number of guns that have been bought in the last couple years.
As if we
Uh,
were gonna shoot the pandemic away.
Fear is a very strong motivator, and I think people are afraid for themselves and their families, and they think everybody else has a gun, so they have to have a
Mhm.
gun.
Mhm.
And we live in a state where the not just the federal government, but the state legislature has really removed many barriers to gun ownership, and so there are more guns than there are people. And one
Yeah.
of the things that we know about there being more guns than there are people is
Mhm.
that when people reach a real height of rage and frustration, and they have a gun available, it is more likely that they will use it. In families where there is already intimate partner or uh, violence or child abuse, if a
Mhm.
gun is available, they will use it. And
Mhm.
so, like you said, we really need to ask ourselves, what is it that we want to do? In the DA's office, we confiscate guns when they've been used in violent crimes. We also try to confiscate guns and have orders around domestic violence so that a family that has experienced domestic violence
Mhm.
will not also then have a gun in their home. Uh,
Yes.
but we only get involved after something bad has happened.
Right.
So it is
Right. And so to that end, how I know that's not your department, but who's in charge of doing something before something bad happens?
I think all of us are in charge of doing something before something bad happens. So like
Mhm.
you said, their adverse childhood experiences are when you have trauma, uh,
Mhm.
your brain develops differently. Uh,
Yes.
you respond to provocation differently.
Mhm.
You're always, kind of fight or flight. You are always ready to fight.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the things that we know from research is that we can identify somebody who might become a shooter or a victim of a shooting or a homicide in the third grade.
Well, oh,
And
yes, yeah, I've read that.
yeah, and that
3rd
is
grade
because
is a critical year.
it is a critical year, and that is also because we can identify those adverse childhood experiences there. That's when
Mhm.
that kid starts to um, fall behind in
Mhm.
school. They may start to miss school. They may start to disengage from, there are a lot of kids, both you and I are parents, and, of
Mhm.
girls, and who've been very involved in lots of different things. And there are a
Yes.
lot of kids that you see in those elementary school years that you never see again, and after school activities and extracurricular things.
Hmm.
Um, and that's because their trauma has caught up with them. And so those are really the same people that we see in the criminal legal system, whether
Right.
that is low level crime, whether we're talking about people who have substance abuse and mental health issues, um, generally both,
Hmm.
or people who have committed the most violent crimes, right? They are generally people that when you look at them had many challenges where we could have identified uh, a way to help them beforehand, right? And so
Yes.
the best way to to bring down the violence is for it to have never happened. And the best way for it to have never happened, I think, is for us to be investing in our children and families, like over investing in our most vulnerable children and families, investing in
Mhm.
housing, investing in workforce development. Um, I have recently become a fan of universal basic income, not because I
Yes.
feel like we should be giving people handouts, but because
Right.
we live now in a society and in a time where it just costs a lot of money. Uh, you cannot be poor
Hmm.
and expect to have any reasonable quality of life here in the United States. And we know that poverty eats children's brains,
Yes.
really. And if it's difficult for their parents, specifically their mothers, to take care of them, they will suffer later. And
Yes.
and so we as a community have to just double down on what is important to us. We want to be able to invest those tens of thousands of dollars that it costs to keep somebody in prison. We
Yes.
should be investing that in 4-year-olds, 2-year-olds, really, and their
Right.
families.
Right. Right. And that's one of the things that I can't understand why it's so hard for Congress to keep intact the child care tax credit, because it literally lifted, I think they said it lifted some 10 million children out of poverty. And so
That's correct. Even the fast forwarding the child care subsidy, the child
mhm.
during the pandemic.
Right, that's what
Um,
I'm talking
yeah.
about.
Well, do you just and the we used to have a child care tax credit in North Carolina too, which the legislature got rid of, which helped even more.
Hmm.
It doesn't take a lot to lift families out of poverty. We just
Hmm.
seem unwilling to invest in it.
Right. Right. And it seems like the lawmakers want to be in everybody's business in their pocket and assume, oh, they're going to spend their money this way. And you don't know how people are going to spend their money. You don't know. It's ridiculous at any rate. It's just utterly ridiculous. All right, everyone. I did drop the StreamYard uh, link in the chat, and feel free to type in any comments, whether you're on YouTube or on Facebook. If you're on YouTube or Facebook and you click the StreamYard link to type in a comment, look to your right of the screen to type in the comment. Or if you want to appear on stage, I'll just pull you up. I have your co-worker here, Brenda Ford Harding. I'm going to add to the stream. Okay, let's see. Oh, I don't like that. Let me see if I can make that bigger. Let's see. No, that doesn't work. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, there you are, Brenda. How are you?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. It's always good to see you. Which I know that you work with Satana. Oh, Satana, keep your mic open. We're gonna have a conversation.
Oh,
We're,
okay.
we're gonna we're all gonna just talk and chat. So, Brenda, tell us your title there within the DA's office.
I am Deputy Chief for Legal and Community Affairs. As you know, I was a civil rights lawyer, so I came to
Mm-hmm.
retirement to work with her because it took a dynamic person like her that would make me come back
Uh-huh.
to the
Okay.
workforce.
I see. Okay. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I know that Satana, you are very popular, and
And
you know what? Huh?
we are sorors too.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. That's right. Deltas, fabulous women, awesome women. Satana, tell me what you want the people to know about this upcoming election, what you are looking to do. I was looking at a movie that they made about you. What was it? 400. I can't do in 4 years what it took 400 to do. Something like, what's the
Right,
title of that
right,
movie?
right. I
What's
can't
the
change 400 years in four.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't change 400 years in four. So tell us what it is that you plan to do for when you are reelected to the office of DA.
Yeah, well, from your lips to God's ears, we have been really laser focused on a few things. One, our primary focus is always the safety of the people of Durham County.
Hmm.
And so that is our continued, that is what we will continue to be focused on. And
Hmm.
really, when we say the safety of the people of Durham County, we certainly mean that we are laser focused on violent crime and accountability for violent crime.
Hmm.
It also means that we do not want to create more violent crime in the future. If
Yes.
anybody's read Michelle Alexander, there's lots of research now that shows that we are certainly our communities are paying for the mass incarceration of the 80s and
Hmm.
90s with the lives
Yes.
of the people who were children then, who grew
Mm.
up with uh, fathers and increasingly mothers who were incarcerated, who then had parents who came home with felony records and the inability to get housing and jobs, and so we really want to make sure that we are focused on the accountability that's necessary for the most violent people and the
Yes.
accountability for the low level things that we don't set our community up to be more violent in the next 20 years. So that
Yes.
means being focused on things like driver's license restoration for people who may have lost their driver's licenses because they can't pay fines and fees. Diversion of cases when someone shows that they have mental health or substance abuse issues. Um, Finding accountability in different ways. We have community partners who have been working with us over the last 3 years to create ways for victims to lead accountability. So for victims to say, hey, really what I want to know is why this person chose me.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things we know is that our victims and our defendants are the same people. They often come from the same communities, sometimes the same families,
Oh,
and
oh dear. Hmm.
so we want to recognize that there is not one size fits all for everyone, and that
Right.
we treat everybody as an individual and treat each case individually, and provide accountability as necessary for each case.
Right. So, Brenda, in your role in the DA's office, what do you do specifically? Help me out.
Everything. Well,
Satana, you have her doing everything?
start with the most important thing. And
Uh-huh.
this is the first time a district attorney in North Carolina has had a community person, and that's a very critical part of her vision.
Hmm.
And we had really early on at St. Joseph, the town hall, so people
Yes.
understand what the district attorney's office is all
Hmm.
about. And we had all the team leads, and that's another thing that she did was to divide the office up into team leads for different areas. Uh,
Hmm.
so did a one for the Spanish speaking people, because that
Yes.
we go to meetings all over the place, mostly Zoom now because of the pandemic. But
Right.
beforehand, make that visible. I
Hmm.
am the certifying official for U visas, which allows people who are victims of crime, who are not citizens, that could be able to stay in the country.
Oh,
And
wow.
other types of policy kinds of things. But I do a lot of different things in the office. But my primary thing is being the community person and also helping with systems with in terms of the legal part of the organization. I do not prosecute cases,
Hmm.
um, but I do everything but that.
Okay. Okay. So explain, so with this community aspect, these, and separating your office into teams to more cohesively manage
Mhm.
all of the things that you're doing. Are there other examples of DAs across the country that are doing what you're doing, Satana?
Well, we have in our office, I have taken the lead from several uh, different prosecutors in the country, especially the Black women prosecutors. So,
Okay.
folks like Kim Fox in
Mhm.
Chicago, um, Darcel Clark in the Bronx, my good friend Rachel Rollins, who was the district attorney in Boston and is now the first Black woman to be appointed U.S. attorney for the District of Massachusetts.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
my good friend
Fantastic.
Sherry Boston in DeKalb County in Atlanta, and these
Mhm.
are generally jurisdictions in which um, they have high violent crime,
Mhm.
um, and have thought through ways to be smarter about their caseload and how they prosecute that are community focused.
Mhm.
Brenda talked a little bit about our town hall. We make a
Yes.
real effort to do public education. So you can find us on social media. You can find us on, especially on Facebook and Medium. Medium is
Mhm.
where our webpage is, and we have a lot of information about the work that we do. We have
Mhm.
done an annual report every
Mhm.
year
Okay.
that sums up um, what that year looked like, what our accomplishments and challenges were that year.
Mhm.
Um, and we have really focused on research as well. So that is one of the things that I learned from folks like Kim Fox is that you can't say what you're going to do till you know what you're already doing. And
Right.
so
Right.
we we research what we're doing so that we know how we are prosecuting cases, and certainly as a manager, that helps me understand how the policies that we talk about in public are happening in the courtroom.
Mhm. Very good, very good. So what you're telling me is that you meet with your tribe however way you can, and you take ideas from the best of what they're doing, so you're not really reinventing the wheel, but you're creating a better office based on the needs of Durham. And
Yeah.
so go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
I was going to just say amen to that. I mean, we have now decades and decades and decades of research on the criminal legal system, um, how poverty impacts crime in a community, what are
Right.
the best ways to deal with it. And we're really trying to put that into practice instead of working from fear. Um, and the fear that if we don't lock people up, there'll be violence. Um, we want to work from a uh, educated, data, evidence-based approach to
Uh-huh.
how we do our jobs.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so with these ideas that you've taken from all these people, different prosecutors from across the country, is this and what you've set up in Durham, has it been unique, or had you had some elements of this in the DA's office previously from a previous administration?
I can't tell you really what they did previously. I don't think anybody can. I think what
Mhm.
we can say is that since 2000, we've had uh, two district attorneys removed from office, um, and that there has been, the office was not in the best possible place that it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so really what we want is for our community to trust us, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know that Black and brown people don't trust, they don't trust law enforcement, they don't trust
Mm-hmm.
prosecutors. We want people to think they will be treated fairly when
Yes.
they come to the courthouse. And so part of the reason we are so transparent and we are so community involved is to build some trust amongst people
Mm-hmm.
that we are going to do what we say we do. That I'm just
Right.
not out here talking, and then when you
Right.
get down to the courthouse, you're not going to be seen as an individual, as a victim, or as a defendant. That
Right.
we
Right.
will try our best um, to find the accountability that each case deserves. And so uh, that's really what we want people to trust us and to
Right.
trust that we have the best interests of our community at heart.
Right. Right. So, Brenda, do
Yes.
you think that have you had a chance to hear any feedback or anything from the community since you're the community liaison, so to speak?
I heard more things, of course, before we were doing Zoom. But yes, people are recognizing that and they like that. I want to mention also what's very critical is that when we talk about the violent crimes and
Mm-hmm.
that we have what we call homicide status, where you go before the judge and tell them what the status is of each case. But what's
Mm-hmm.
done is also bring the families together the week before the homicide status, and they get an opportunity to talk to the ADAs one on one. And also, we have different things, and we just had the most recent one on Friday when
Mm-hmm.
uh, the the thing was what happens when uh, after the police leaves, because a lot of them, homicide takes a long time to prosecute.
Yeah.
It takes time, so you want sure that you haven't forgotten about them, and that's one of the things that Satana does, is that she's able to balance all of those around.
Uh-huh.
Our community is important to her.
Right. Right. We have a comment from the chat from Danielle Purifoy. Says, really appreciate the clarity about how the criminal legal system works and the difference between accountability and punishment. And speaking of that, I think that some people politically get really into the weeds about, well, you're not being law and order with this whole reform piece on being a prosecutor as a DA, and can you speak to that? How you feel punishment versus accountability, Satana? Could you explain that to us a little bit?
Sure. So it is not new that the prosecutor has 100% discretion in what cases move forward. Since
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of the we'll just talk about North Carolina and the North Carolina Constitution. I said at the beginning that the prosecutor has 100% discretion in which cases move forward. What we have seen before, however, is that discretion was used to advance the cause of the powerful, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to giving everybody a fair chance
Right.
in the criminal legal system. And
Right.
I think we we live in we have to the we know more about cases than people do on the street. It is really easy to say you should just go forward and punish everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
punishing everybody um, is not accountability, right?
Right.
Sending people to prison is not accountability. That is punishment,
Right.
and victims often and community members want accountability, uh, and they want to know why somebody did something. They want to
Mm-hmm.
understand how, as a community, we cannot have that happen again. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not what happens when you punish people. When you punish people, you send them away from your community. You take away the opportunity for victims to heal. You take away the opportunity for that community to really wrestle with what it means um, that this certain thing occurred. Now, that's not to say that there's not going to be people who are punished. Like I said at the beginning, unfortunately, for people who commit serious and violent crimes, that is the only tool that we have.
Right.
But for situations where we have a different tool, we should be using the different tools, right?
Yes. Yes.
Everything, I like to say for a lot of prosecutors are hammers,
Mm-hmm.
and everything looks like a nail. And
Mhm.
so we don't want everything to look like a nail. We want only a nail to be a nail,
Right. Right.
right?
Okay.
Um, when we see somebody in our community who is suffering from a substance abuse problem, and that they're constantly being arrested
Right.
for possession
Right.
of a substance that they're only using to hurt themselves, that's a missed opportunity for us as a community to help that person not come back to the criminal legal system. And
Right.
so that is what we're trying to do around accountability. We have victims who say, look, I don't want this person to go to jail. If they go to jail, they can't provide me restitution.
Mm-hmm.
um, if they so we are constant. It's a constant balancing act between
Uh-huh.
determining what are we in this for. Are we really in this to have a better, safer community, or are we just in this to punish people?
And speaking of this, I just remembered one question that I didn't write down that I meant to ask you. What about our young people that get into some larceny or some cases like that, and they're young, they're under the age of 16 or whatever. What really is happening with them? What is your philosophy on those lower level crimes for our young people?
Yeah, so first I will tell you what the philosophy of the state of North Carolina, and that's in all 100 counties and every jurisdiction, is that North Carolina tries to treat children as children first.
Okay.
And so um, anyone under 18
Mm-hmm.
um, is initially diverted to the Office of Juvenile Justice. So we already have a diversionary system. Then
Okay.
from the Office of Juvenile Justice, they will work with the family, with the child and the family, to see if there are needs that they can meet. Um, and then those cases never make it to me. Generally, the only cases that make it to me that get referred out of there are the most serious and the most violent cases, and that's what we want. We want as many kids to be diverted initially from the criminal legal system as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that means that a very small number um, are charged with very serious crimes that then have to come to the prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when we have discretion as a prosecutor, we would prefer um, for the low level cases to divert those cases.
Uh-huh.
Because the number one indicator of your involvement in the criminal justice center, criminal legal system as an adult is your
Mm-hmm.
involvement as a child, by far. And that means whether or not you've been charged, or that means you have a parent who has come into contact with the criminal legal system or has been to prison, or you live in a community in which there are high rates of interaction with the criminal legal system. And so, for as many children as possible, we don't, especially as many Black and brown children, we do not want that to be a part of their growing up. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and so unfortunately, when a child has been charged with a violent crime, those cases do come to us, and we do proceed to court with those cases. However, we have a juvenile team. I have a team of ADAs who are trained in dealing with cases that involve children as defendants,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they are the ones who take those cases and negotiate those cases and work those cases through the system.
Okay. How many people do you have on that team?
There are 2 attorneys on that team, and I think also 2 legal assistants.
Okay. Okay. All right. We have another question from Fredia M. Butler. Should education be required while a person is incarcerated?
Yeah, I don't have any control over what happens once somebody is convicted. They go to they become that's the state's responsibility. I think
Mhm.
they're all, but having said that, my personal opinion is I think education frees us all.
Mhm. Yes.
And the opportunity for education is the opportunity to have a different life than the life that you had. And
Right.
so I think it is always that we can never have enough education in any setting, but certainly not for people who are already going to face a lot of challenges when they come out.
Right.
Education shouldn't be one of those challenges.
Right. I know that in my home state of Michigan, once upon a time, people could get degrees and what have you while incarcerated. And then we got a very punitive governor, and then he took that away. And I have no idea what the status is now. And if there's anybody in the chat that's in the state of Michigan that has an answer to that, that would be great. But, all across the country, there's different philosophies on that on that type of thing. And it's unfortunate, very unfortunate, because you're right, education does free us all. So so what do you I know one other thing that I know about your campaign from in the past, and I'm assuming you're wanting to continue this, is the whole issue of bail.
Hmm.
I remember this one horrible case of a young man in New York. I don't know how he got sent to Rikers Island. You know which case I'm talking about? He
Khalif
got sent.
Browder. Yeah, you're
He
talking
got
about Khalif
sent.
Browder. Mhm.
Right. He got sent to Rikers Island and couldn't make bail. And then eventually he killed himself when he did finally get. Did he ever
Mhm.
get out? Did he
He
kill
did get
himself?
out. Yeah, he did
Got
get out,
out. Yeah,
and he
but
took
it
his
was
life after
years.
he was out. Yeah, he spent years awaiting trial. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so cash bail has been it was a big issue in 2018. I assume it will be a big issue now
Hmm.
in this election. In my office, we have one of the things that I promised to do was not to only ask for bail in those cases in which we thought that a person was a danger to themselves or others,
Hmm.
or in which they were at risk of flight.
Hmm.
And so, the North again, and I go back, keep going back to the North Carolina Constitution because it is important. It is important that we follow that. And the North
Right.
Carolina Constitution requires that everyone receive the opportunity um, to post a bond, or it can be a written promise to appear.
Hmm.
But that the only people who are denied a bond are people who are charged with first degree murder
Hmm.
and are facing the death penalty. And so we've had research done over the last 3 years on our bond policy here in Durham County and what we asked for. And that research was done in 35 jurisdictions in which there's been bail reform, and there was zero correlation um, between bail reform and violence. And so
Hmm.
what we're seeing is that people who normally would be too poor to post a bond are able to get out. They're able to work. They're able to take care of their families until their court date. And sometimes, I would like to remind people that bond is a pretrial detention issue. That means that these people are innocent until they're proven guilty, and it is
Right.
my job to prove them guilty. And if we
Right.
cannot prove them guilty, there is no reason for them to be locked up. Um, and so we want people to be able to defend themselves in court.
Hmm.
Um, and we know that almost 90% of people come to court without any bond. Right?
Okay.
People take it seriously. They show up when it's time to show up. Um, and so, uh, bond it is not having people awaiting trial in jail is a big part of the cash bond reform, and I think we've accomplished that here in Durham. I think our pretrial detention numbers are down almost 30% over the last 3 years.
Very good. Very good. So that's definitely one of your campaign promises kept, correct?
That is one of my campaign promises kept. That's correct.
Okay. All right. So one of the things that I am so fearful of, I never want to be on anybody's jury, because I don't think that I can handle it. I can't handle it personally. I can't handle any murder cases or anything like that. Don't even ask me. I can't deal with it. I don't want to see any pictures. And I read and research on you, Satana, that you, due to the size of your jurisdiction, you literally read every autopsy report that you receive.
I do.
I couldn't do it. It couldn't be me. It could not be me.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, it's important because it is a part of my job. It is
right.
The expectation of the people of Durham County that I will know these cases, and so
right.
I do try to know these cases. And I also feel like it is my responsibility as a human being, right, as the mother, and overwhelmingly, these are unfortunately pictures of young Black people.
Yes.
I feel like it is my responsibility to put myself as much as I can in a space of reverence for those people and what has happened to them.
Yes.
And now I can't. There's no way I'm ever. There's no way that I can feel what they're feeling. Right.
Right.
But I don't want them to think that I would treat their child any differently than I would treat my child.
Right. Right.
And irrespective of what anybody says, or that, those are people who did not deserve to be there.
Right.
And I want to always remember that these are not just victims. These are not just bodies. These are real people who had real families and real lives and real hopes and dreams and aspirations for themselves that were cut short. So.
Let me say again, for those people who will hear this show on playback, we're talking to District Attorney Satana DeBerry, who a few years back in 2019 became the District Attorney of Durham of the 16th Prosecutorial District of North Carolina. And she is a progressive Democratic district attorney. She believes in, she has a very progressive following and belief system and what have you. And she is a mother of how many daughters do you have?
3.
3 daughters, just like me, 3 daughters. Yep. So, and they all went through Durham public school system, correct?
Yes, they are. They are. 2 of them are in high school in Durham Public Schools right now. One of them is a graduate of Durham Public Schools and is at the North Carolina Central University now. And so,
okay, very good. So here we are fortunate to have a district attorney that is living in the community, working in the community. Children are embedded in the community. So you are living and breathing Durham. And this is the same thing that I'm telling all of you who may be hearing this broadcast that live in other jurisdictions. This is what you want from a district attorney, knowing what this person believes in, understanding that they have a lot of power. They have a lot of power, and you want someone who is going to be fair, just in their thought processes, and community oriented. And the way she has her office set up, we have on screen, we have Brenda Ford Harding, who works in the community side of things. Brenda, tell us, what do you think has been the most difficult case that you've had to work on from the community side in the DA's office? Is it okay to say that?
At first, I thought you were going to ask me what was the most difficult case that we had on the criminal side, and because I was so traumatized by the case that happened in Chapel Hill, and I knew that I could never be a prosecutor. So my skill set is in community, reaching out to people, different organizations. It doesn't matter really what they're about. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not really interested in guns, except for guns do to people, because in a second you can shoot someone and they're gone.
Right.
Have that gun, it wouldn't happen. Uh,
Right.
so there are a lot of different groups in Durham, and so we want to make sure we reach all cross sections, regardless of what the income is, what the position is, or whether they speak English or Spanish or whatever. So that's been a good thing for me because I enjoy people. And also being a proud civil rights lawyer, I was always involved with a lot of people. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's neat for the district attorney's office in North Carolina to have that position.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. We have another comment here from Stephen Lane. He asks, how important should people exercise their right to remain silent? DA DeBerry?
I cannot provide legal advice to people, but what I will say is it is that is an important right,
Mm-hmm.
um, and there is a reason that so many people know it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I will say to that.
That's what you'll say to that. And that's all for that. Okay. Are there anything I'm going to give you, DA DeBerry, an opportunity to tell the people what they need to know about your campaign this time, of why you want to be reelected as district attorney for Durham, North Carolina.
Thanks, Pam. I appreciate that. I will, go back to the short film that you were talking about. We can't change 400 years in four. And in these last 3.5 years, almost 4 years, we have done a tremendous job in increasing the impact of the criminal legal system on the most vulnerable people in Durham County. But we're not going to change that culture overnight, and we can't
Mhm,
change that in just 4 years. And so I thank the people of Durham County for the 4 years that they gave me, and I
mhm,
hope that they will give me another 4 years so that we can continue to focus on um, those violent and serious things and how we as a
mhm.
community can get more serious about preventing those, um,
Yes.
and how we can work together in these next 4 years in creating a culture where we are focused on the most vulnerable among us, as opposed to uh, trying to punish people, that we spend
Mhm,
some time thinking about the ways in which we can stop the violence before it starts. And I would also encourage people to go to my website, www.dberry, the number 4DA, or you can go to satanadeberry.com and look at our priorities for the next 4 years, as well as some of the things that we've accomplished over the last 3 years. There are now 36,000 more people in Durham County with driver's licenses than had them in 2018, because of a community and prosecutor-led effort to forgive fines and costs and fees for people. Um, there are 3,000 charges that have been expunged for juveniles who committed them when they were under 18, that could not now be prosecuted in North Carolina. And so as we move towards the future, we are also trying to right
mhm.
some of the wrongs of the past. And so I encourage folks to check out my website and to vote for me on May 17th.
May 17th is the key date. God knows we had a topsy turvy thing with the with the date with our gerrymandering of districts and what have you, but we will still persevere, right?
We will persevere, and I believe early voting starts April 28th.
Okay, early voting in North Carolina, April 28th.
I always early vote because you never know if you might get hit by
Right.
a bus. I hope I will not, but I want my
God
voice.
forbid.
I always want my voice to be heard.
That's right. We want our voices to be heard, and there's look in Texas how their vote has just been just greatly diminished and what have you. You know, the ability to vote, making it so hard. And like I said at the beginning of this broadcast, is that it is so, the power of the vote is so significant, because no one would be trying to take it away from you this hard if it wasn't important. Trust me, they would not. And I hope that everyone has learned something about what a district attorney does, has good respect for the power that position holds. And from what you have learned this evening from District Attorney Satana DeBerry, hopefully you can take that information and apply it to wherever you are in the country. Really, if you like what she said, what you heard here, you can apply that to wherever it is that you live and say, well, I need to know more about that. Because if you don't, remember Ahmaud Arbery, remember Breonna Taylor. Who else should we remember? D.A. DeBerry and
Sandra Bland,
Sandra
George Floyd.
Bland. Who? George Floyd.
I mean, there
Who
are so
else?
many names.
There's so many. So, and
there's
that,
so many names that haven't even made it to, national attention. And so
right. So we have to be mindful. That's the whole point of this channel, is to be mindful from the voter education aspect, just teaching you about what other candidates are doing, what they're running for, what their office means, and all of that. So please like, subscribe, and share this video for this channel. I really greatly appreciate you all. D.A. DeBerry, I thank you so much for your time. Brenda, thank you. Thank you. You guys are doing a great job here in Durham. And May 17th, early voting in April 28th for Durham, North Carolina. And for the rest of you, again, study what your DA does. Pay attention to all elected positions, because they all count. They all count. And I have one last comment from Judy Foster Davis, very informative. And I know for a fact she lives in the state of Michigan, and Stephen lives in the state of, Stephen likes this as well, and he's in the state of South Carolina. So we are so appreciative of you. Everybody, good night, and we'll see you next Sunday. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.